So you think you're being a good homeowner, you're trying to do the right thing, and what do they tell you with your hot water tank? And that's to check your temperature and pressure relief valve once a year, as if you don't have anything better to do than to come down and check a valve on your hot water tank. Anyway, for some reason, you decide today's the day I'm going to go check it, and sure enough it's a little stuck, but it opens up and it works and water drains out and you feel great. And then you hear a drip, 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 and you realize it's leaking. And you try to flick it some more and it continues to leak. And you're like, great, I tried to do the right thing. No good deed goes unpunished. And now you have a leaky temperature and pressure relief valve. So what do? Are you going to replace it? All you wanted to do was come down and do a 2-minute thing where you check that the valve works, and now you're draining the tank and replacing valves. I was able to avoid that, luckily, after 3 days of fiddling with this thing. But I'll show you how I did it. I was positive. I even went out and bought a new valve. I was on the verge of replacing it, but what I did is, you have to understand that in that valve there's a spring and a gasket that has to seat. And obviously if you haven't, like mine, if you haven't checked it in years and years and it was corroded when you try to open it and it's kind of stuck, there's corrosion in there and it's not seating properly on that rubber gasket. So you're trying to shut it and it's kind of just barely opening enough for water to drip out. So what you have to do is to get it to seat in there. And how do you do that? You can't really get in there. So what you have to do is keep playing with that valve, that flap. Keep flipping it up, down, slamming it down, letting it slap down. You want it to sit and try to break off or seat itself well enough that it stops dripping. Now, I'm not saying mess with it. You never ever want to cap that, because if you cap it, this thing will explode. Like on Mythbusters, they capped that and it built up pressure. That's the thing, that if this goes out of control and heats up too much, it'll release the pressure. So you don't want to seal it. And if anything is wrong, I do recommend replacing it. And it's not the end of the world to replace it. You just turn off the water, turn off the gas, drain it to about here, loosen it up, put on some Teflon tape and put the new one on. That's not the end of the world. But if you don't want to go through all that, what you have to do is just keep fiddling and messing and flipping that valve over and over, and you're going to have a pail of water or a hose or something get the water to the drain. But you want to keep moving that flap and get it to where it's going to break off some of that corrosion, or slap it so where that gasket is going to seat and seal itself. So you come over to the valve and you take it and you're just constantly flipping it back and forth, up and down, and either, pushing it in. You can flip that valve up and push it in. You can spin it around 360 degrees, keep flipping it and letting it slam down. When you flip it, it'll open up and the spring will shut real quickly, and you want it to seat that gasket on there. Like I said, I did it the first day and it kept dripping. I did it the second day and it sort of worked, but it didn't work completely. And by the third day, I kept doing it and it seated itself and it sealed. It somehow broke free of that corrosion, or I got it to align correctly where there wasn't anything inhibiting that gasket from sealing, and it stopped completely. Like I said, I was all ready to replace this thing. I went out the third day and bought it. I'm like, let me try this one more time. I kept flipping it, spinning it around, kind of pulling the spring out, letting it slap shut, keep flipping it, and it finally seated itself. So it's not something you really want to mess with. If it's not working, just replace it. But I was able to get it to stop dripping just by keep working it, keep opening it, twisting it, flipping it up and down. You don't really have anything to lose. Like I said, when I first tested it, it didn't even open. It was so corroded. So I know there's corrosion on that rubber gasket. But just keep messing with it and it'll seat. And like I said, it's not the end of the world if you have to replace it. Just find which size you need. Turn off the water to the tank. Turn the pilot light, the gas light to pilot. Drain the water down to about here. You can unscrew that, put Teflon tape on the new one, screw it in. It's not the end of the world if you have to replace it. But the last thing you want to do on a weekend, you come down and you check it. I'm just going to check that valve. And all of a sudden you're replacing valves. And you don't want to go through that. So I just recommend keep fiddling with that valve. Let it slap shut. Really open it and just flick it or pull it back and let it slap on that rubber gasket and try to seat itself. and stop it from leaking. So every other person is going to say, oh, if it's leaking, just replace it. You don't have to. Just keep working with it and hopefully give it time and it'll seat itself. So hopefully this helps you out. Like I said, it might take a couple days, but good luck.
Well, I hope you liked the video you just watched. If you did, feel free to subscribe by clicking the button on this side. You can also check out all the videos I've done, the playlist from things I've built, things I've fixed, home repair, 3D printing. And on this side, you can check out a recommended video similar to the one you just watched. And as always, down in the description, I'll put a link to my blog, which has more pictures and more information about the video you just watched. Thanks.